Picture the scene. It's, I don't know, a Tuesday night. You're sitting at the kitchen table. The dinner plates are pushed to the side. There's probably a cold cup of coffee there. And in their place is just a literal mountain of paper.
The dreaded kitchen table crisis. I know it well.
Exactly. You've got medical forms you don't understand, insurance explanations with like terms that look like they're in another language,
Right.
appointment cards, Post-it notes with scribbled phone numbers you can't even read anymore. And you just feel this physical weight pressing down on you. You are just drowning in it.
It's a paralyzing feeling, truly.
Now, usually when we talk about this, we're talking about what, tax season? Or maybe closing on a house. But for millions of people, we're talking about informal caregivers. This isn't a once-a-year thing. This is Tuesday.
And Wednesday, and the day after that. It's a chronic state of overwhelm.
It is.
And the natural instinct, if you're a friend or a mentor trying to help someone in that state, is to just rush in and try to fix it. You want to grab all the papers, make a spreadsheet.
Yes. You want to solve the problem.
You want to offer 10 different solutions and just get it done.
Right. You want to be the hero. You want to be the expert who swoops in. But today's deep dive is going to completely flip that whole instinct on its head.
It really is.
We are looking at just a fascinating document today that suggests that swooping in might actually be the wrong move entirely.
A really counterintuitive approach.
We're diving into Chapter 6 of the Christian Care Mentor, a guide to sharing God's love with informal caregivers. Now, for anyone listening who thinks, oh, I'm not a mentor, just stick with us. Because this chapter, providing information, is honestly a masterclass in behavioral psychology.
Oh, absolutely. And communication. It applies to just about anyone helping a friend in a crisis.
It does. And the subtitle is really the key here.
Guides, not experts, on the journey.
Guides, not experts. That right there is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to explore why providing less information is often more effective than providing more.
And how the source reframes information sharing, not as, having all the answers, but as a form of stewardship.
Which is such a fascinating reframe.
It is.
So let's start with the problem this chapter identifies. It talks about the caregiver's dilemma. It's not just that they're busy, it's more specific.
Yeah.
What is going on in the mind of someone caring for a loved one that makes just normal information processing so difficult?
Well, the source describes this state where caregivers feel completely, utterly buried. And it's not just the volume of tasks, it's the novelty of them.
The novelty, right?
You have to remember, when you become a caregiver, say a spouse has a stroke or a parent gets a dementia diagnosis, you are suddenly navigating these massive, complex systems.
Healthcare, legal stuff, insurance policies.
Yeah, things you never went to school for.
It's like instant immersion in a foreign language.
Exactly, and you were thrown into it because of a trauma. So the source highlights a specific emotional state, a loss of agency. Caregivers feel like things are just happening to them. And psychologically, when you combine high stress with a lack of control, your executive function just takes a massive hit.
An executive function is basically the brain's CEO, right? It's the part that sorts, prioritizes, makes decisions.
Precisely. And when you are chronically overwhelmed, that CEO basically goes on vacation. The whole system gets jammed. It's cognitive overload.
So the dilemma is this. The caregiver desperately needs information, but their brain is in the absolute worst possible state to process that information.
That's it, in a nutshell.
Which brings us to what I call the helper's trap. If I see my friend drowning in that paperwork, my instinct, my good friend instinct, is to bring them data.
Of course.
I want to Google everything, print out 10 articles, find 3 specialists, and just dump it all on their table. I want to say, look, I found solutions.
And you feel great about it. You feel like you've really contributed something. But the source argues that to the caregiver, you haven't brought solutions. You've brought work. You've just added 10 more items to a to-do list that was already crushing them. You might think you're being helpful, but you're actually increasing the cognitive load.
That is such a hard pill to swallow because the intent is so pure, but the impact is just more pressure.
Right.
So let's talk about this shift the source proposes. Moving from being an expert to a guide, how does the text differentiate those two? Because expert usually sounds like a good thing.
In this context, the expert mindset is it's performance-based. If I approach you as an expert, I feel this internal pressure to have the answer.
Right.
If you ask me about Medicaid, I feel like I need to know the policy nuances. If you ask about a medication, I feel like I have to know the side effects. It's all about my knowledge base.
Which sounds exhausting for the mentor, honestly.
I mean,
You'd have to be a walking encyclopedia.
it's exhausting and it's dangerous because you probably aren't an actual expert in all those fields.
Oh, man.
But for the caregiver, it's intimidating. It just reinforces that power imbalance. I know things you don't.
Okay, so flip it. What is a guide?
A guide, or a care mentor, as the book calls them, has a totally different goal. Their goal isn't to solve the problem for the caregiver.
Okay.
Their goal is to offer timely, trustworthy support with clarity and grace.
Clarity and grace. That feels very different from facts and figures.
It shifts the focus from what I know to what you need right now. The source really reframes information sharing. It stops being a test of the mentor's intelligence and becomes a ministry of wisdom and stewardship.
Stewardship, that's a word that usually makes me think of like church budgets or environmentalism.
Yeah.
It basically means taking care of something that doesn't belong to you. How does that apply to information?
This is one of the most profound points in the chapter, I think. In this view, the mentor isn't the source of the wisdom. They don't have to generate the answers themselves. They are simply a steward, a manager of resources that already exist. God or the community or the medical system has already provided the answers somewhere.
So the mentor's job isn't to be the resource. It's to connect the caregiver to the resource.
Exactly. You aren't the reservoir, you're the pipe. You're just the conduit.
That has to take a massive amount of pressure off the mentor. You don't have to know how the insurance claim works.
You just have to know who can explain it.
Right.
And crucially, you have to know when the caregiver is ready to hear it. That's the wisdom part. An expert dumps data because they have it. A steward manages the flow of that data so it nourishes instead of floods.
To make this more concrete, the source uses a case study that I found really, really moving. It's the story of Maria and Ruth.
I love a good case study.
Me too. Theory is great, but I need to see the mechanics of how this conversation actually sounds.
And this one is very relatable. So Maria is caring for her husband after a new diagnosis. The text describes her state vividly. She's buried under paperwork, appointments, and unfamiliar terms.
She's in that red zone, that cognitive overload we talked about.
Completely. And she says this line to her mentor, Ruth, that it really stuck with me too.
What was it?
I don't even know what questions to ask anymore.
Ugh. That is the sound of total burnout, when your executive function is so offline that you can't even formulate the question.
Right. Now, imagine Ruth as the mentor here. If Ruth were operating in expert mode, she'd probably say, okay, Maria, grab a pen. Here are the 3 questions you need to ask the doctor.
And here's the form for the insurance, and you need to call the specialist.
Yeah.
Here is the plan. Get to work.
Exactly. But Ruth doesn't do that. She pivots completely.
So what does she do?
First, she just pauses. She reads the room. Then she asks this permission-based question. She says, would it help if we focused on just one thing today?
Just one thing. That is the pivot point. She's artificially narrowing the scope to make it manageable.
She is lowering the cognitive load right there in that moment. And Maria nods, probably with huge relief because she can handle one thing.
She can't handle 10.
But then Ruth does something very vulnerable. She doesn't just give the advice from on high, she shares a piece of her own story.
Ah, the vulnerability piece. This is important.
It is. Ruth admits that during her own caregiving journey, she didn't realize she was eligible for respite support, basically a professional break.
Okay.
Because she thought help was only for, and I'm quoting, people worse off than me.
Oh, wow. That hits hard. People worse off than me. It's such a common psychological trap. We minimize our own struggle because we see someone else suffering more.
So we don't think we deserve help.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's comparative suffering. By admitting she fell into that same trap, Ruth validates Maria's confusion without judging it.
She's normalizing the struggle. She's not standing above Maria pulling her up. She's standing next to her saying, I tripped on this step too.
That's a perfect way to put it. So after making that connection, Ruth offers the one thing.
The phone number.
Just one. A phone number for respite support. But, and this is key, she doesn't just write it on a Post-it and slide it across the table. She explains exactly what to expect when Maria calls.
That detail seems so important. Why is explaining what to expect so critical?
Because it addresses the fear of the unknown. When you're stressed, making a phone call to a stranger feels like climbing Everest.
Totally.
You have all this anxiety layering on top of anxiety. Who's going to answer? Will it be a machine? Are they going to ask for money? Will they think I'm a bad wife for asking for a break?
You play out the worst-case scenario in your head 100 times.
Exactly. So Ruth says, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, when you call, a lady named Sarah usually answers. She's very kind. She'll just ask for your zip code to see what's available.
She's walking her through the mental script. She's taken away the ambiguity.
She is pre-paving the road so Maria doesn't have to guess what's around the corner.
So what happened? Did Maria make the call?
She did. A week later, she called Ruth back. And this is the part I really want to highlight. Maria says, I made the call. She doesn't say, I got the funding or the nurse is coming tomorrow.
Just I made the call.
Just that. And then she adds, even if nothing comes of it, I don't feel as alone.
Even if nothing comes of it. So the victory wasn't actually getting the respite care right that second.
No.
The victory was that she felt empowered enough to pick up the phone.
Precisely. The source analyzes this so beautifully. It says this proves that information, when offered with humility, does more than solve a logistical problem. It restores agency. It reduces fear.
It addresses the emotional isolation.
Which is often the real crisis.
It's not about the phone number. It's about the fact that someone walked her to the door.
And waited while she turned the handle.
I love that. Okay, I want to zoom out a bit to this idea of core formation that the chapter covers. There's a really interesting point in there about identity.
Yes.
The source claims that a lot of people don't actually identify as caregivers.
This is a huge identity trap. The text points out that many people just view their actions as, doing what love requires. They think, I'm not a caregiver, I'm just his wife, or I'm just her daughter.
Which sounds noble, right? I mean, of course you do it out of love. You don't want to bureaucratize your relationship.
It is noble, but the consequence is that because they don't use the label caregiver, they don't look for support designed for caregivers.
Okay.
They miss out on resources because they don't think they qualify.
That makes so much sense. If I don't see myself as a runner, I'm not going to go buy running shoes, even if my feet hurt from running every day.
That's a great analogy. So part of the mentor's role, the stewardship role, is to gently help them see that accepting the label doesn't diminish the love.
Right.
Being a caregiver doesn't mean you stop being a wife. It actually gives you the tools to sustain being a wife.
And this ties back to that concept of stewardship versus expertise. The mentor isn't saying, I, the expert, hereby declare you a caregiver.
No.
They're saying, hey, here is a community of people doing what you were doing, and there is support available for this role.
Yes. And since this is a Christian-based source, it grounds this idea in Scripture. It references Proverbs 11:14,
Which is?
Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety.
How does the source interpret that? Because abundance of counselors could sound like too many cooks in the kitchen, which is exactly what we said we didn't want earlier.
That's a sharp observation. The source interprets safety as coming from shared wisdom. It's not about one person telling you everything.
Okay.
It's about being connected to a network. The mentor's job isn't to be the abundance of counselors all by themselves. Their job is to connect the caregiver to that abundance, the doctors, the support groups, the helplines, so that the caregiver isn't isolated.
Isolation is the danger zone.
Connection is safety.
I see. So the mentor is the bridge to the abundance, not the abundance itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the mindset. Guide, not expert. We've got the goal. Stewardship and restoring agency. But I'm a practical person. If I was sitting across from a friend who is overwhelmed, what do I actually say? The source has a role play section that breaks down the mechanics of this, right?
It does, and it's very, very specific. It gives a step-by-step framework for what it calls safe guidance.
Let's break it down. Step 1.
Step 1 is validation. In the role play, the caregiver says, everyone tells me something different. And the mentor doesn't jump in to correct them. They simply say, that's a very common experience.
It sounds so simple, but just hearing, you aren't crazy, this is common, must be a huge relief.
It just lowers the defenses. Then step 2 is asking permission. The mentor asks, would it be helpful if I shared a couple of options that others have found useful?
I noticed that phrasing. Would it be helpful? It puts the ball in the caregiver's court. They can say no.
And if they say no, you stop. That's crucial. You respect the no. But if they say yes, you move to step 3, limiting options.
The rule of 2.
The rule of 2, exactly. The source explicitly suggests offering just 2 concrete options.
Why 2? Why not 3 or 5?
It's about decision fatigue and choice architecture. If I give you one option, it feels like a mandate. Do this.
Right, a command.
If I give you 5, it feels like a buffet where you can't decide. 2 gives you a choice, A or B, which empowers you, but it's manageable. In the example, the mentor offers a local caregiver helpline and the idea of asking a family doctor for referrals. That's it.
Okay, so we validated, asked permission, and offered 2 options. What's the next move?
Step 4 is restoring autonomy. The mentor asks, you know your situation best. What feels like a good next step for you?
You know your situation best. That is the exact opposite of the I'm the expert mindset.
It completely affirms that the caregiver is the expert on their own life. Even if they're confused about the medical details, they know their capacity. They know their home life.
Right.
By asking them to choose, you are reminding them that they are still the driver of the car. You're just holding the map.
And finally, step 5.
Affirmation. When the caregiver chooses, say, calling the helpline, the mentor says, that sounds like a thoughtful choice. I'm glad you have a place to begin. They just validate the decision.
It's really a masterclass in communication. It seems so gentle, but it's actually very structured.
It is. It's intentional. It prevents the mentor from accidentally steamrolling the very person they are trying to help.
Now, there is a big warning label in this chapter, though,
Right.
a thoughts and tips section that deals with boundaries. What is the one line a mentor should never cross?
This is absolutely critical. The source says mentors must always refer medical, legal, or financial questions to professionals.
So if Maria asks, should I sell the house to pay for care? Or does this medication look right?
The answer has to be, I can't answer that, but let's find someone who can.
Never. Even if the mentor happens to be a retired nurse or an accountant in the role of the care mentor, you have to step back.
Yes. The mentor's role is to share what helped them emotionally or logistically, like, this organization was really helpful for me, without assuming it's the universal fix or giving professional advice.
Because if you give bad medical advice, the consequences are disastrous.
And even if you give good medical advice, you're blurring the lines of the relationship. You are becoming a provider, not a companion.
The goal is to walk alongside, not to treat or represent.
Exactly. Walk alongside.
That brings us right back to the subtitle, Guides on the Journey.
It's funny, we usually think of a guide as someone who is out in front, leading the way with a machete.
Right.
But in this context, the guide is the person walking right next to you, maybe holding a flashlight, pointing out a pothole here and there, but letting you set the pace.
And pointing out the abundance of counselors over there on the hill if you need them.
Exactly.
This has been such a refreshing look at how to help.
Mm-hmm.
I think we live in a culture that really values the hot take or the life hack. We want the instant fix.
We want to be the person with the answer key.
We do. But this source is arguing for something slower, deeper, and honestly just more human.
It's the difference between information and wisdom. Information is data. Wisdom is knowing how and when to share that data in a way that actually lands and helps.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 6, let's recap the mission. Providing information is not about dumping facts.
No, as the summary says, it's about opening doors, not pushing people through them.
And the key takeaways for our listeners, what should they remember?
Remember the guide versus expert shift. Check your ego at the door. You don't need to be the smart one. You need to be the safe one.
I like that. Be the safe one.
And use the techniques we talked about. Ask permission, limit the options to 2, and validate their feelings. And remember, Ruth's example vulnerability often unlocks doors that advice just can't.
And that timing matters. The source mentions offering information slowly and even praying for discernment before you speak. It's about the pause.
The pause is everything.
I want to leave everyone with a thought to mull over today. We live in a world of absolute information overload. Our phones are constantly screaming facts at us.
Mm-hmm.
If you are trying to help a friend in crisis, whether they're a caregiver or just going through a hard time, the most loving thing you might do is
Stop.
just stop talking.
Exactly. Withhold the flood of information. Instead of sending them 5 links, what if you just offered one clear, manageable next step and simply asked, would this be helpful? Ask yourself, are you trying to be the expert who fixes it or the guide who walks alongside? Because people don't usually need a fix. They just need to know they aren't walking alone.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for walking alongside us today.